Tapes rolling, no?
Well, we'll start off with easy questions.
Okay.
And we'll go from there. First, tell us your name.
My name is Margaret Mary McCoy Duzunko.
Alrighty, and you were born in?
I was born in Hollywood, County Down, Northern Ireland.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Hollywood, where it is, and the name Margaret, and how you came about getting that name.
Well, the name Margaret, my father's aunt was called Margaret, so I got the name from her. And she was also my godmother. And I was born in a small town in Hollywood. It was 5 miles from Belfast, and it was between Bangor and Belfast, about 5 miles from Bangor. And it was very small. We were right on the seashore, and I went to St. Patrick's School, and all the Catholics went to the one school, and the Protestants in the area went to another school.
And Hollywood, I just want to get, is in what county?
It's in County Down, in the north of Ireland.
Because Belfast is in County
Antrim.
Okay.
Yeah, and Bangor is also in County Down. Okay. So we were between.
And were you born in the hospital, or were you?
No, I was born at home. I was the oldest of 7 children, and all of us were born at home except the youngest, Frances. She was born in a hospital, but the rest of us were born at home.
And you said you were the youngest, or the oldest of 7.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the siblings?
Well, I have a sister, Eilish, and she's living in Belfast now. She never left Ireland. I have a sister, Philomena. She has been travelled all over. She went to Germany, and she ended up living in England. I had a brother, Patrick Joseph, who died when he was 38. He was on vacation and he drowned. And then I have a sister, Pauline, who lives in Bangor. And my brother, Bernard McCoy, lives in America. He lives in Stratford, where I live. And I have a sister, Frances, who lives in Hollywood. In fact, she lives in the house that my parents lived in. And she still lives there.
Oh, I got to ask you this question. I don't like to ask ladies this question, but I have to, and you don't have to answer it. But it's when were you born?
I was born on December 2nd, 1940.
Oh, very good. Almost coming into the Christmas season there.
Yes.
Your parents and your grandparents, did they come from that same area?
My mother came from Derry, and my father came from County Down. My grandparents came from, my father's parents came from County Down, and my mother's parents came from County Derry.
So you got the 2 areas, Derry and Down.
Yes.
Did you go back between both? Did you go up to Derry a lot?
Oh, yes, I loved it. I used to go up there every summer, and I stayed with my aunts up there. They had a farm, and we used to go out in the mornings and feed the chickens and go and get milk for, the daily usage. And
what part of Derry was that?
It was in, the town was...
I don't want to put you on the spot
now. It was Drumahoe.
Oh, Drumahoe.
Right.
And your mother's maiden name?
My mother's maiden name was Cassidy.
And they from Drumahoe.
Right.
Very nice.
She was actually from Eglinton.
Okay. So you spent a lot of your childhood in the summertime going up?
Up to Derry, yeah. We used to go down to the spring and get the fresh water every day, bring that out. And when we took our baths, we used to take that from the rain. It would come down the spout into the barrels, and we would wash our hair with that water, and that was used for everything except for drinking or for cooking food.
What type of now that was country area. That was
yes.
Up in Derry.
Yes.
Now in Hollywood, what type of setting was your home?
It was a little town.
Little town.
Yes, it was small. We had like maybe 2 butcher shops, and we didn't have any supermarkets or anything like that. Every day we went down and got our fresh fruits and vegetables, and At that time, they didn't have too many fruits. I think we had got oranges, basically, or maybe apples. Probably got them from the orchards. But, and every day, one of the kids would go down to the market and get the fresh meat for that dinner for that day.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we basically had a routine. I mean, Sunday my mother would cook a roast beef or leg of lamb or whatever, and for dinner. And then we would have that on Monday, what was left over for Monday. And then Tuesday we would have mince. And Wednesday we would have stew. And Thursday, I don't know what we had Thursday, I can't remember that. But Friday we would have fish. And Saturday we would have a big fry. And that's how our week went, you know, as far as foods.
You probably had some type of chicken or something on Thursday.
Yeah, probably. I couldn't remember what we had on Thursday. But
you mentioned mince.
Uh-huh.
Explain that to the
Well,
audience
a mince is like ground beef. And you would put it into a pot with water. You would add carrots and onions and cook that up. And then you would have mashed potatoes with it. You can always make cottage pie with that by putting the mince in the bottom of a dish and mashing up the potatoes and putting them on the top of it. That's mince.
I kind of figured people would not know what that was.
Right, right.
I want to touch back on something you mentioned earlier
Okay.
about going to school. Could you just go back and...
Back to school.
Yeah. You talked about going to the Catholic school.
Yes.
The Protestant school and the Catholic school, because we're talking Northern Ireland now here.
Yes, we're in the north of Ireland. And the Catholics went to Catholic school and Protestants went to the Protestant school. And really we didn't mix too much with them. We had, you know, friends, but you just really stuck with your own kind of people. And the school, it was just a room. We had classrooms. They weren't very large. But I was in classrooms with my cousins, and everybody knew everybody in the school. They all grew up together. And I went to school when I was 4 years of age, and I quit when I was 14. I actually was 14 on December 2nd, and the school year ended on December 31st. And when I was 14, I couldn't wait to go to work. I thought that would be the best thing for me to go to work. And so I went up to Woolworths, where they were hiring for the summer, for Christmas. And I went there and they hired me. And I was there a week when the truant officer came in to Woolworths and brought me back to school for 2 weeks. They wouldn't let me work. You had to finish the year. You had to finish the year. And I remember that so well.
Did your mother work outside the home?
No, she never worked outside the home. She stayed home.
She was a housewife?
Yes, she did a lot of baking. Every Friday she would make soda bread, wheaten bread, treacle bread. She always made 2 apple pies, a sponge cake, and little buns. I remember that as well. That used to be so good.
do you still? Did you learn how to make?
Yeah, I make the soda bread and the wheaten bread.
Beautiful. If you were standing and putting your mind's eye in the front doorway of your house back in Hollywood, what would you see? What would you be looking at?
If I opened the door?
Yeah, if you look out, were you looking out at the countryside or?
There was a big field. Actually, I was born in 1940, and across the street from our house, they had air raid shelters.
Oh.
And we used to play in them. And they had gas masks. And we used to put the gas masks, because this was after the war. I must have been maybe 6 or 7 years of age, or 8, I can't remember the age. But we used to go out there and play, and that's what I saw were the air raid shelters. And that used to be really a lot of fun, you know, because we could hide in there and use the gas masks as whatever.
So it was like a playground.
Yes, it was. They took those down after a few years, and it was just an open field then.
You mentioned leaving school at 14, going on to work around Christmas time. What was the Christmas celebration? I'll talk a bit about Christmas and birthdays and that type of thing, you know, those kind of occasions. What do you remember?
That was always great. My mother and father would make the Christmas puddings, and my mother had a weak hand, so she couldn't really stir the puddings, and they were pretty heavy. So my father and her would do the puddings, and then you would stir a wish into the pudding. When it was being stirred, you'd put your wish in. And then they would also make Christmas cakes. And you would keep those for, well, you'd use one for Christmas, and then you would keep the other one for New Year. And we would have a real tree, and we didn't have lights at that time, so we would make our own decorations with paper, and we'd cut out little dolls and put them on the tree, or lollipops, whatever, pieces of candy, whatever you had, you put on the tree. We always had an angel on the top.
Was it the big celebration for New Year's as well, or was that something less than Christmas?
No, well, it was a celebration, but it was mostly for adults. I do remember all the people in our neighbourhood going outside at midnight and open up their windows to let the old year out and the new year in. So they'd open up the windows and do that. And we always had a big meal on New Year's Day. And it was a lot of fun between Christmas and New Year's because you were out of school and, you know.
Another holiday I remember was Halloween. Was that a...
Halloween was fun. Actually, we would go to the neighbours' houses, trick or treat, but you had to do a trick or you had to do something. You had to sing or dance or whatever before you got anything. And you might have got a penny or something like that.
You had to do something for the treat.
Yeah, you never got it if you just stood there. And we also, my mother used to bake apple dumplings. It was in a big bowl. And they used to put money in it, wrapped up in paper, and put this in through it. So you'd get your pudding, you'd find money. And then they also baked apple pies and put apple tarts, actually, and put money in there. And for years, my father used to get half a crown. Every year he would cut the pie and he would get the half crown. We say, how does Daddy always get the half crown? He used to put it in himself, you know, so we really fooled us for long enough till we finally caught on. But yeah, that was a fun time. We dressed up, but not as elaborate as what they do today, but we used to dress up.
After you left school, and did you go on to work?
Yes, when I was 14, then I went back to look for a job when I was 14. And I had never encountered the difference when, like growing up in a small town, everybody was actually intermarried and, you know, friends. We never really were taught. We were taught like that you can't marry a different religion because it was very difficult. So we never really associated in that way. But I mean, we got along with our neighbours and everything, so there was never a problem. But when I went for a job, I went into one place and filled in my application. There were no openings. Go to another place, there was no openings. And after a while, I'm saying, you know, that's really straight. You know, nobody has any jobs. Well, jobs were scarce, but you know, I kept hoping. So finally, I'm talking to my parents. I'm saying, you know, can't get a job. Nobody wants to hire me, you know. And my mother says, well, maybe you shouldn't put down that you went to St. Patrick's School, which was a joke because you never would do that. But what happened to me, I went to Woolworths again, because that was a big store then and a lot of people worked there. And I went up to ask for the job. And I had said, I worked here for a couple of weeks. And they said, well, we have no vacancies. So I wanted to leave an application, but they said no. So I was coming down the stairs, and there was a man coming up called Mr. Geertsen, and he was from Copenhagen. And he spoke to me, and I said hello and whatever. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I was looking for a job, but they don't have any openings. And he said, would you just wait there? And he went up to the office, And he came down and told me to go up to the office, and I got a job.
He had some pull.
Yes, he was a manager.
Oh,
I didn't know at that time,
Right.
who he was, but I did get the job. And it was like, I could not believe it. I thought, they told me they had no jobs, and then I finally got it. So I worked there until I left when I came here when I was 21.
Okay. Did you feel that the employment, the lack thereof, was because of your religion?
Exactly. I never even, at the beginning, I wasn't aware of it, or I never even thought about it, until after a while you did realize that was the reason.
And of course, they didn't ask you your religion. But
Oh no, you just put down the school you went to,
and they knew you were.
and so they knew what you were, and that was very difficult. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I had actually before that I had got a job in a sausage factory before I went back to Woolworths. That was it, and it was wrapping sausages, and that's when I realized that there was a lot of problems. The way people would talk to you, or call you a Fenian or something. I remember coming home to my father and saying, that I was called these names. And then there was a man who lived on our street, lived up at the top of our street, and he had said something to me, and I can't even remember what he said, but I do remember coming home and telling my father, and my father went up to him and told him that we were not, into any kind of stuff, that I needed a job, and I should be left alone there, because I was only like 14. And then it was after I was 14 that I went to work in Woolworths.
During that period, from you left school until you emigrated, what did you do? Were you get involved with like you went in for fun, dances?
Oh yeah, we went to.
Sports,
I went to the movies. I took night classes at our technical school, shorthand typewriting, and I went to, for fun, we went to dances maybe 4 or 5 times a week.